Good morning. Welcome to the information session of the postgraduate sessions, fellowships abroad. I am Belén Terat, and together with my colleague Natalia Struk, we are going to carry out a presentation on the current open call for postgraduate fellowships abroad, and then we will answer any questions and doubts you may have. So without further ado, we'll begin with the presentation. As you know, from the La Caixa Foundation, we support talent and progress, and we have done so for about 40 years. And how do we do so? In this brief presentation, I will explain briefly, or I will describe the fellowship program of La Caixa Foundation, and then we will tell you about one of the most important parts of the selection of fellows, the selection process. And point number 3, we will talk about how competitive our fellowships are. And then finally, we will give you a few tips on how to submit your candidacy. So we'll start with the La Caixa Foundation Fellowship Program. As I started saying, the La Caixa Foundation Fellowship Program is one of the historic programs of the Foundation. The first call started in 1982, so we are around the 44th call, and always with the same mission, promoting excellence, training and research talent at the best universities and research centers in the world. Since then, approximately 6,000 people, well, not approximately, more than 6,000 persons have benefited from one of the many opportunities, training opportunities that we offer year after year. And how do we do it? We do it through 4 programs, 4 calls, fellowship calls, focusing on each of the programs for the specific time of the academic career of a student. First, we have the graduate fellowships, 60 annual fellowships, with the specificity that these are fellowships for graduate programs in Spain for excellent students so that for specific social profiles. As a novelty, we have 10 additional fellowships this year for beneficiaries of the program. Secondly, and this is the program that we will focus on this information session, we have postgraduate fellowships abroad annually, 100 to carry out masters, PhDs, or research stages abroad. Third, we have the fellowship infinite program, annually 60 fellowships in the 2 modalities, incoming and retaining, because the goal of these modalities, the goal of the program, is to attract and retain talent that carries out fellowship programs in Spain and Portugal for any student of any nationality. And finally, for more mature academic careers, we have the postdoc junior bidder fellowships, 40 currently, and with both modalities, incoming and retaining. In total, annually, La Caixa Foundation proposes 260 fellowships in these 4 typologies. And we will focus on the call that we are focused on today. These are grants for Spanish and Portuguese students to carry out postgraduate studies, masters, PhDs, or even research stages in foreign universities in countries of Europe, North America, Asia Pacific, up to a maximum of 24 months. The duration of this fellowship is 2 years. The average cost of this fellowship is approximately 100,000 euros. And as I said, this is one of the historical programs of the Foundation, and proof of this is the substantial accumulated investment. We are around 230 million. Over 230 million euros. And in total, the amount of fellowships granted has been 4,263. What are the key points of the program? I understand that you are considering applying in this call, so I will describe what things you need to take into account. This fellowship is targeted at starting masters or pre-doc stages. So already initiated studies are not financed. The fellowship starts with the program. It should be the beginning of the program. What are the main destinations you can apply to? Europe, understood as all countries that are part of the European space of higher education. For North America, we have the US and Canada, and for Asia, we have Australia, China, South Korea, India, Japan, and Singapore. There are exceptions. For example, this program is open both for Spanish and Portuguese candidates in such a way that a Portuguese candidate cannot use the fellowship in Portugal. It always has to be abroad, and a Spanish candidate cannot carry out these studies in Spain. So this needs to be taken into account. Fields of knowledge, or any discipline, any field is covered by the fellowship with the exception of MBAs. For approximately 3-4 years now. Historically, they had been covered, but as of 3-4 years ago, they were excluded from eligible studies. Another point to take into account, as I said, we have the Infinite PhD program for PhD programs in Spain or Portugal, so that if a Portuguese person can carry out a PhD in Spain, they have to apply to the PhD program. And if a Spaniard wants to carry out a PhD program in Portugal, they will have to apply to the Infinite PhD program, which is currently open. And I think on Tuesday there was an information session about it as well. As to the type of studies, of course, they have to be on site. They have to be in person, so you have to travel to the country where the path of studies takes place, and it's a full-time dedication. The fellowship considers that you have to devote all of your available time to the studies. So, first, the nationality should be Spanish or Portuguese. You need to have a path of graduate studies finished between January 2017 and July 2026. Probably many of you are in the final years of your graduate program, and so you may end in July when the call will be resolved. That's all right. You can still submit your application. It's feasible if you are in the final year of the graduate program. This graduate program has to be conducted in Spain for Spanish candidates or in Portugal for Portuguese candidates. You have to have carried out the graduate studies in these countries. And one of the key aspects for eligibility is the language level. You need a certain language level. Depending on the language, the path of studies will be taught in and the country where you will be studying. Everything that I'm explaining here, well, I guess you don't need me to say it. You've done this, you've checked our website, you have the instructions for the call, which is the key document that you have to read and reread, and that explain all of these potential cases. So what does the fellowship offer for these 2 years maximum duration? It offers unlimited tuition, an allotment for travel, 500 euros for Europe, 1,500 for the US, an initial allocation, which is similar to a monthly payment, and a final allocation, which is conceived for the admin arrangements to obtain your certificate of the studies you have carried out. And you will find information broken down by country on the website, insurance for accidents, and up to 5 applications that you carry out to be accepted into the program at the destination. And it also includes visa costs when this is a requirement of the country. Next steps. What is the calendar that we are working with? As I said, the call started on November 5th. So we are now in the process of receiving applications until January 19. Remember this date, January 19, 2 p.m. CET, deadline to submit your application. There's a second deadline, the deadline for the language certificate. So for all those candidates who either need a language certificate or you're thinking of sitting an examination again to get a higher grade, there are 15 days extension to present the language certificate, February 2nd. And from there on out, all the submissions will go into the selection process and the pre-selection results will be announced on April 10th. And then there's a second stage, interviews during the first 2 weeks of May from the 4th to the 13th, and the final results, the communication of whether you have received the fellowship or not, you've been granted the fellowship or not. This will be published on May 21st. The second date you need to take into account is the starting time of the fellowship, which is special as well. The fellowship needs to start as follows. For studies in Europe, the start should be full term 2026. So academic year 2026-2027, next fall. For studies in Asia Pacific, you can start throughout 2027. We consider that the programs in these countries have some flexibility, offer some flexibility as to the starting date. So you can start throughout 2027. And for North America, it has to be the fellowship, the program should start during the fall term 2027. There's also something that is important and that we always like to stress. As you will see later, this is a very competitive process. There are many candidates who do not make it. But we should also stress this collaboration that we have with Microbank and with the BPI. So all candidates that reach the interview stage, which is one of the final stages of the selection program, if they're not granted the fellowship, they can benefit from favorable conditions for loaning money, a favorable loan under special conditions. Okay, now the selection process. As I said before, during the application process, all applications are submitted, and that's where our work begins. That's where eligibility control begins. What does that mean? That we go through all candidates one by one, all submissions, to confirm that they meet eligibility requirements. What we said before, nationality, end of the graduate program, language level, they are reviewed one by one. And all the eligible ones go on to phase 2, pre-selection, with a remote assessment. Each of the applications is assessed by 3 independent experts remotely. And finally, the best candidates, the best candidacies of the pre-selection process are invited to an interview with the selection committees. An interview is carried out. It is in hybrid format, so the experts are together physically in Barcelona, and the candidates are interviewed via Zoom. Each committee is made up of 4 to 6 evaluators, and the committee is in charge of the final assessment and therefore whether they select the candidates or not. Just for you to get an idea, the scale goes from 1 to 8. 1, very bad. 8, excellent, exceptional. That's the assessment scale. And just like I said before, that you should read and reread the instructions for participation, I also encourage you to read the assessment guideline. There's a document where all of this process is described, all of the criteria, the dynamic of interviews, everything is very well described. And I'm sure you will be able to prepare a more competitive application. So then the pre-selection stage, the remote stage, as I said, 3 experts. All experts are independent specialists, professors. They can be Spanish or not. And the system allows for a process to resolve discrepancies. So if two experts have completely different opinions, the platform allows for a double check, a monitoring, and a confirmation of the scores to guarantee the utmost transparency. And it's also very important to take into account that for those professors who are familiar with the discipline of the candidate, their assessment carries a greater weight. What are the assessment criteria at this first stage? There are 3 with different weights. At the first moment, we focus on grades and CV. You will have to hand in your scorecard, your work experience, all information matters. And then motivation letter and the document, the statement of purpose, a 3-page document where we ask you to tell us why you need the fellowship, why you want to participate in the program that you're applying to, and also you can tell us a bit about yourselves. And what is assessed here is innovation, originality of the ideas, if the program chosen matches your academic background, and this is what leads us to assessing the statement of purpose, and finally, recommendation letters. As you know, the system demands a minimum of 3 to 5 recommendation letters, referrals that you need to request via the platform. And the content of the letters and the profile of the person who submitted the letters is also taken into account, 20%. So then the interview, the makeup of the selection committee. And you should also take into account that the grade obtained in the pre-selection phase also counts in this final stage. It is like one more evaluator, the grade you got in the first section. And then as the criteria, we use more or less the same criteria as in the first stage, but with some differences. On the one side, 40% is the potential of the candidate. At this point, we have you in front of us. The committee is listening to you. You've made a presentation. So then we come to the questions. There's a certain interaction with the committee. So here the soft skills are assessed, the clarity and consistency of your ideas, how you speak, how you express your ideas, whether you can show leadership, teamwork capacity. Then 30%, the document and motivation letter, the adequacy of the program, the host institution, and 30%, with a lower weight than in the previous stage, your academic and professional track record. Because here we do understand that all persons, all candidates that come to the interview are excellent when it comes to academic and professional track records. I'll stop here and I'll pass the floor over to my colleague Natalia, who will continue with the presentation. Thank you very much, Belén. We will continue with item 3, competitiveness of the fellowships. If you wonder whether our fellowships are very competitive, the answer is yes. As you can see in the next chart, submissions have increased progressively in the past few years, especially starting 2021 with the startup of the graduate program fellowships. In 2025, the last call, we reached a total of 4,819 applications for 255 fellowships offered. This is an average success rate of 5.2%. And then we will see that for the total of fellowships, 4,800, over 1,000 submissions were received for the program we're talking about today, the postgraduate fellowships abroad. You can see how the number of candidates drops as we move on in the selection process. Out of the 1,140 that we received first, 1,101 were eligible candidates. Only 39 did not meet the eligibility criteria. And then when we went on to the pre-selection stage, 899 were ruled out and 202 were pre-selected. So 202 candidates were called for interviews. And from there, we came to the 100 fellows of the 2025 call, and this is a success rate of 11%. So 11 candidates submitted their candidacy per fellowship. At this point, what we always like to say is that if a candidacy is ruled out, it does not mean that you're not good, that you do not have good potential, that your CV is not good. It responds to the high degree of competitiveness. We've received very good candidacies with brilliant academic records, and this is the result. So to finish the presentation, I will give you a few ideas, things that may be a bit complex about how to fill out the application, and I hope this will help you. I guess some of you are already in the process of presenting the application, or at least you've accessed the program. To see how it works, this platform that you can access through the link you see on screen. It's the second year we're using it. If last year you presented your candidacy, you can recuperate your data, the user and password, with username and password, and you can also access your former candidacy in case you want to use some of the information there, but you always need to fill out all the information again. If you filled out the application before 2024 in another platform, in the screen we're seeing now, you'll be able to access the former candidacy to recuperate the data and use it to fill it out this time. So on the screen we're seeing now, you have all of the tabs that you have to fill out with all of the information requested and documentation required. It's important that you fill out everything in English and that all the documentation is translated into English. You can translate it yourselves, and you need to fill out all of the fields here at the next screen. I will tell you which tabs to fill out in studies to be pursued. It's important that you choose well the panel you're going to register for, because the type of evaluators will depend on that, the type of evaluators that will assess your candidacy. So in the area of knowledge, you can choose between 4 committees: arts and humanities, social sciences, life sciences, and physical sciences, math, engineering. And you will also be able to choose a sub-panel. And if we continue to the next slide, we find the reference letters tab. In order to continue here, it is essential to fill out the previous one. So once here, you will have to click on the yellow button, Unlock Reference Letters, and then you will be able to, through the plus button, you will be able to select the letters that, as Belén said, will be submitted via the system to the referee or the person you've chosen to recommend you. We need at least 3 recommendation letters, but you can provide up to 5. In order to request these letters, you will need to input a series of data of the referees, such as name, email, CV, and a brief description or a link to their web CV. If you were to, or if you had to modify the studies to be pursued, you find an option here, Modify Studies. You can go back to the previous screen, and then you would have to click again under Unlock Reference Letters to continue with the letter request process. And to finish, some advice, as Belén said. It is very important, it is basic, that you read carefully the rules for participation and to read carefully the frequently asked questions. which include a series of potential cases. And if you have doubts, they will be solved there properly, and otherwise you can contact us via the email on screen, becas@contact.fundacionlacaixa.org, and we will be delighted to answer any questions. As to the reference letters, we recommend that you request them in advance, well in advance. It is important, for example, that you fill out your personal data in the request, the studies to be carried out, and then directly you can request the letters of reference. This is important because this involves other persons who will receive this request, they will have to accept it, and then decide whether they want to draft this recommendation letter. So it is a process that takes longer, and it would be a shame that a request cannot be sent because, or an application cannot be submitted because the reference letters have not been received. At the same time, we would encourage you to give warning to the people who will receive these requests, your referees, so that they can be up to speed. You have to submit at least 3 letters of recommendation, and once these have been submitted by your referees, you will receive an alert saying that you can proceed with your application. And the 2 additional ones that you can attach to the application, if they do not arrive in time, that's all right. But if they do, they will be attached to the application directly. You do not need to wait for them. You do not need to pay attention to them because it will be an automatic process. As to the statement of purpose, we recommend that you're clear and concise. You have 3 pages to tell us about your project, what you would like to do, and maybe it's not enough room to do so. So we recommend that you structure this letter very well. And why not? Maybe you should also find expert advice from someone who can help you, give you tips to draft it. And finally, as to the deadline to submit it, it's 19 January, 2 p.m. And no applications will be accepted outside of this period. No documentation inside or outside of the platform except for the certificate, the language certificate, which can be submitted up to 15 days later, until February 2nd. And just to finish, here on screen you can see our website, where, as we've said, you have all of the information about this call. Contact email, becas@contact.fundacionlacaixa.org, and our social media, where we encourage you to follow us on Instagram and X. And now we will start with the round of Q&A that you can write on the chat, and we will answer them as we receive them. We will give you a minute. We'll start reading the questions, give you some time to ask. Okay, I'll start. The first question is, for research, do you need to be a member of a PhD? No, there are research stages that are carried out abroad without it being connected to a PhD program here in Spain or abroad. Second question is about language certificates accepted, and do they work for a specific period of time? No, they don't have a use-by date. Only one person can only submit a candidacy for only one program. Yeah, the 2 programs are incompatible. You can only submit your candidacy to one program. Then they're asking us about the interview. The interview lasts approximately 20 minutes. There's one first section of about 3 minutes where the candidate is asked to give a brief explanation about themselves, their motivation, and the program they want to be in. It's like a summary of the statement of purpose. with anything they might want to add in the time available. And the remaining time, up to the 20 minutes, is for questions that the experts, the members of the committee, will ask the candidate directly. Everything is done in English. Next question is in the rules for participation. It says that if you are doing musical studies, you need to present a sample, but it does not say anything about other artistic studies where a portfolio is crucial. Yes, that is true. In the case of musical studies, the platform specifically requests a sample of your work. However, for the rest of artistic disciplines, there is no such request. We are, however, aware of the fact that the portfolio for any other artistic discipline is necessary, so we ask you to upload it if you deem it necessary onto this specific section that says additional documentation. Next question says, I want to get the advanced certification, but the exam dates are very tight. Can I present the official exam results on the language deadline? As we mentioned, the answer is no, because we already give you an additional 15 days to submit this certificate. So on February 2nd, that will be the deadline to present it. All right, next question about research stages. Are they compatible with non-university private centers such as an art atelier with a full-time art program? Well, you should know that the fellowship is for postgraduate official programs, regular programs. We know there are certain disciplines in which this may be a bit more difficult, but as it is now, it is not compatible. You can send us an email with your information, with the details, and we will assess it individually. Okay, next question about the timelines, the calendars. If the postgraduate studies in the UK do not start in November but January of the year after, can we still apply during this call? Yes, you can still apply. When we talk about the full term, we talk about it in the broadest sense, September, December, or even January. And if the chosen program only has one start date, which is, for example, as you said, in January, it's not an issue. You can pause the fellowship or defer its beginning until the date the program starts. Okay, next one. I want to go on a master's in Sweden, but it includes a compulsory exchange of one semester in the United States. Is this allowed? Yes, it is allowed. In due time, we would request the compulsory documentation certifying that this is so, that it's a compulsory exchange and you can go to United States, but you have to take something into account. The allowance will not be updated based on the country you would go to. If the program starts in Sweden, you will receive the allowance for studies in Sweden. And in this exchange, it will not be updated to the monthly allowance for the United States. Next questions. The language level does it carry a weight? The higher language level, the highest your score, or do you just need a pass? Yeah, exactly. The level required is the one specified in the rules for participation, which is quite high. It's an excellent level. So it shouldn't carry a different weight if you have a different score. All right. Application in cases where the candidate has already been admitted to a master's program, does pre-admission carry a weight in the pre-admission process? This is a very good question, and it says, okay, at the time of application, it is not necessary to be admitted to a program. So now you are applying. End of applications is January 19, and it is very likely that by then you will not have an admission. You will not be admitted to a program. You do not need it, and having an admission, being admitted, does not give you an extra points, does not make your candidacy more robust, because it's not necessary. In the event of you having an admission, being admitted, when you submit your application. You can mention it, of course, in the statement of purpose, but that will not give you a higher score. Next question. The dual high school degree from an American institution, is it enough to certify my level of English? No, you have two possibilities. The first one is to present one of the titles, one of the certifications described under the rules for participation. And the second possibility is to prove that you've carried out postgraduate studies for 2 academic years in the host country. That means dual high school, that's not valid. Next question, if I am already registered in a PhD program, can I apply for the fellowship? Yes, you can apply. What's important for you to know is that you should not be in a situation where you can get your PhD title at that moment. Yes, that's important because the fellowship must have a minimum duration of 9 months, from 9 to 24. So if you're doing a research stage and you will receive your PhD, you will be granted your PhD soon. This means you would not be eligible. Are the fellowships incompatible with working at the host country? As per the rules for participation, any internship or paid work needs to receive our consent, our authorization. Certain positions with certain hours of dedication and a certain amount of pay are allowed, but these are analyzed on a case-by-case basis. Are the results of an official language school valid? Yes, AIM is valid. Yes. Well, it's not the same thing. But if you look at the chart for language, there is a specific category where they describe all of the certificates acceptable. AIM is included and the official language school is included as well, which for English-speaking countries is not accepted, but for other countries is indeed accepted with a B2 level. But again, take a look at the rules for participation. Everything's stated there. Next question. I want to request the fellowship for classical music studies in many conservatories. Access tests are from March to April. Is there a problem with that? No issue, because as I said, you do not need to have an admission to be able to participate. I recommend that you apply to the program, you do the access tests from March to April, and if it so happens that you get the fellowship, then you will already have the admission. And if you're admitted into the program, then everything will match. So I think there are no incompatibilities there. Is it possible to combine the fellowship with another grant, for example, from another university? Well, our fellowship is in principle incompatible with other financial aid, other fellowships, other grants, whenever these cover the same concepts. This EU fellowship or grant, if it covers the same concepts, tuition, travel, etc., it's completely incompatible. If the grant covers other concepts, we could assess compatibility, but at any rate, we can analyze it case by case. I would also say that all of the questions you ask are very normal, reasonable, but I would encourage you to apply, enter the process, and then if you are selected and you get the fellowship, we can analyze case by case. We can get into the fine detail. For now, I mean, you're asking questions, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. I would encourage you to apply anyway. Next question, if I apply and I am accepted at a U.S. university to start in the fall 2026, the fellowship would be applicable? The answer is no. As Belén said, the beginning of the fellowship for all courses of studies in the United States should be for fall 2027. What you could try to do is talk to the university and propose that you defer for fall 2027. Yes, exactly. And this is usual practice. Selecting a deferral is the usual. And this, I know it goes against your plan of starting in 2026, but it's not possible for that. You should have applied last year. And next question is, I graduate this year, last year of my graduate program in July, and I would like to apply for the master's fellowship in February. Will I have time enough? This is quite usual. At the time of application, upload your academic record just as it is now. And if you're selected, if you obtain the fellowship, we would then later on request the final certificate. But this shouldn't stop you from applying. All right. They told me that maybe there was a bit of a mix-up with the language certificates and the question about the official language school. Please, again, read the rules of participation. Take a look at the detailed information related to language. And any questions you have, email us. We will be delighted to answer. The statement of purpose should be done including the desired host institutions. It's a regular question, or a usual question. You have to apply based on your first choice, what you dream to do, what you wish to do, your path. Obviously, since we do not request that you are already admitted when you apply, these plans may change because maybe you're not admitted to the program. Maybe there's another master's that you're more interested in. Maybe you've decided to change track within the same area of knowledge. So the program may change. That's fine. You apply with your first choice in mind, but if you're selected for the fellowship, later on, you will request to be admitted in the program, and this program may be different from the one you initially reported in the application. Okay, next question talks about how competitive the panels are, the 4 areas of knowledge. Again, we have 4 areas of knowledge: humanities and arts, social sciences, life sciences, and the technical side, physics, mathematics, etc. So you have to think that the fellowships are distributed proportionally in these 4 areas, depending on the number of applications received. So as of today, I cannot know or say what panel or what committee will be more competitive. So once we have all of the applications, we will know what the distribution by disciplines is, and then based on this distribution by disciplines, we will allocate the fellowships proportionally. If you have questions about this process, please read the selection process guideline, which explains this in detail. Next question. Can one same professor provide a recommendation letter for 2 different candidates? Yes, no problem. No issue with that. These are 2 different applications, 2 different candidates. And what he will have to say about the both candidates will be different, so no problem. And this connects me with the next question. Someone asks where can they find the rules for participation. They can be read on our website under Education and Fellowships. Then you click on Postgraduate Fellowships Abroad, information, description, rules for participation, and towards the bottom left you can find the rules for participation in PDF. The next question says whether this CV should be in English. Yes, it should be written in English. All the information provided in the application should be in English, since the evaluators may be foreign and they do not necessarily speak Spanish, for example. The next question is, can I request a research fellowship while I am doing my PhD, and then if I get my PhD afterwards, use the fellowship for postdoc? Can they be used during the same call, if I'm understanding correctly? You should know that you can only apply and be fellows once. I mean, if you apply now for a research stage and you receive the fellowship, at some point you will be able to decide whether you continue with this research stage or whether you carry out a master's. You participate in a master's program because you think that's the best thing for you. But at any rate, if you are selected as a fellow once, you will not be able to apply to the next call. I'm going back to a question from before that we missed. Do you penalize in any way if there are just 3 recommendation letters instead of 5? The answer is no. It is compulsory to present 5 letters, and the remaining 2 would be additional. So no, there is no problem, and you will not be scored higher because you have 5. If you do not get into the program you applied to and you get the fellowship, what happens then? That's a very good question. This is an undesirable situation and very uncommon. In all of the time that we've been in the program, everyone has been able to use a fellowship in a program. They've been able to initiate a program, be it the initially desired one or not. I don't know if maybe your intention is to go to Europe and you're not admitted in any other programs in Europe. You should know that you have the opportunity to go to the United States because it starts 1 year later. The calendar helps you in that situation. However, if you are applying to the United States, you have a full year to prepare your application process to ensure an admission. Our advice would be to diversify, to apply to as many universities as possible. We pay for 5 applications, and you should apply to universities at different levels, not just top 10 universities in the United States, because it may be very difficult. You need to diversify to guarantee an admission in the United States. That's very important. And if finally you are not admitted in the United States or to a master's or a PhD or a research stage, you cannot use the fellowship to go to Europe because it goes against the calendar of the call. The calendar of the call, the start dates are key and they have to be respected. It's not difficult. I encourage you to do it. I mean, it's time and work intensive. You need to work on it a lot. You need to prepare your applications very well. You need to diversify. But I don't know of anyone who has been granted the fellowship but then has not been able to use it because they have not been admitted anywhere. If you do not access the program you applied to and you... no, sorry, that's the previous question. You just answered it. So if I want to go to North America, I cannot start in October 2026. And no, as I said before, the fellowship for North America studies should commence in the full term 2027. Actually, the beneficiaries of the fellowship of 2025 will start their studies in North America now in 2026, fall 2026. Okay, we'll continue with the next question. Can you give us some advice for the statement of purpose? Should we focus on our reasons to apply or what we plan to do with these studies carried out? I understand it's difficult. I understand that a blank page, and such an important one, is very complex. The only advice I can give you is to prepare it very well, to devote time to it, and if you know of other candidates or other fellows or professors that can help you. The statements are normally a combination of everything. You need to talk about a more personal side of things, why you chose or what made you who you are. and what made you choose this specific program. And then there's also a section on the impact this fellowship would have for you, this fellowship with this program at a social level. So it is a mix of many different things. But yes, you need to talk a bit about everything. Next question is about what marks the difference. What makes the difference between candidates that come to the interview? All candidates who reach the interview stage are excellent. They have wonderful CVs. And what sets them aside is how defend their application and how they show themselves in front of the committee. But we're actually talking about centesimal points difference. It's a very competitive process. And oftentimes, we try to offer a feedback. We offer quantitative feedback about the score as compared to the rest of interviewed candidates. But it is complex because you're all very good. Everyone who reaches the interview stage, and people who don't even reach the interview stage, you're all very good. If I have to participate in a master's in 2026 in Spain, do I have to apply for 2027, depending on where you want to go? If you want to go to the United States, you can start the master's in Spain in 2026. You can apply now for a program in the United States. You can start the master's in Spain in 2026. You can finish it in June 2027, and then in fall term 2027, you can start your studies in the United States. That will be the calendar. But if you want to carry out a master's in Europe, then yes, you would need to apply in 2027. The next question is whether the interview is in English or Spanish. It's in English. Everything is in English. Application, reference letter, letters, interview, everything is in English. If I carried out my studies, my university degree in English, and the university can draft a certificate attesting to that. Is that valid as a language certificate for the fellowship? No. You need to read the list present in the rules for participation. Can I spend half the year in a country different from the host country of the PhD institution for data collection? It's a bit difficult for me to answer this question because I don't know exactly what it is referring to and what type of fellowship it is. So send us an email maybe with the detailed information so we can answer. In my case, I am doing bioengineering, medical bioengineering, which is in between engineering and biomedical. So how important is to select the area of studies given the circumstances? It's very important. For this one, I would refer you to the selection guide where you can see the structure of the panels. Bioengineering, if I'm not mistaken, the selection process guidelines. If I'm not mistaken, bioengineering, I think it's under life sciences, but you need to look at the panels and the committees and make them match with the study program that you want to carry out. It's important because they will assess you based on this. The next question is, when granting a fellowship, do you apply geographical criteria, gender criteria, or others? For example, are there specific percentages such as a certain number of fellowships for the US and a certain number for Europe? No, the answer is no. The 100 fellowships are open to any destination out of the ones eligible, and there is no proportion of fellows or fellowships devoted to specific genders or income or location. I graduated 6 years ago. The master's is not connected to the studies, but it is connected to my work. Should I ask for recommendation letters? Okay, my master's is not related to my studies, but it is related to my field of work. Let's see. It is true that reference letters, are mostly from the world of academia. So someone from academia supporting your application would make sense. Well, but also from work. It is not exclusive. It should be a combination of both. I think we missed a question before. Have you ever had any issues with the host institution not accepting external financing? How can I know about that? I have never encountered that situation. Host universities that have not accepted a student into a program because they have financing for tuition and allowance. I've never encountered this situation. If I have a double nationality, American and Spanish, and I want to apply, is that enough to prove my level of language? In order to apply to an American institution, do I have to apply as American? No, it's not enough. Even if you have dual nationality, the only way in which you can prove your language level, English in this case, is either through the language certificates described in the rules for participation or via having studied postgraduate studies in the host country. Can I apply to a double master's in two countries? It depends. If this master's takes place in different countries, but you will get only one certification at the end, yes, it's possible. If it leads to two different certifications from two different universities, then no, it's not eligible. If the PhD starts in 2026 in the United States, can I apply the funds from the fellowship to the year starting in 2027? No. The fellowship should start at the same time as the program. We cannot finance PhDs that have already started. If your master's is 1 year in Europe, 1 year in the United States, what university should I input? The one in Europe or the one in the US? You always need to state the first university, the university where you will do the first year. Well, watch out here. Yes, because they're masters from Erasmus Mundus, where it's true that they are carried out in different countries. But we have not talked about the fact that dual masters are not eligible. Some of them, part of them are run in Europe and part in the US, management, for example, and these are not eligible. I mean, if your master's is a dual, and when I say dual, I mean that you can carry it out independently in both institutions, one in Europe, the other one in the US, it's not eligible. It's not. You can send us an email with the detailed information about this master's. As to recommendation letters, are there any exclusions if the referee is a close acquaintance, a family member? Well, recommendation letters always come from the world of academia or from work, not from relatives. Of course, then my doubt would be if the university professor is a relative of yours. In that case, no problem. But it should be someone outside of your family. Do you take into account family income? No. No, not for the postgraduate fellowships. What do you value the most in a referral letter? On the one side, as I said, content. The capacity the referee has to talk about you in terms of, well, having actually been close to you and knowing you, and also the profile of the referee. Even if the fellowship in Asia starts in January 2027, can the studies start in August 2026? No. As Belén said, the fellowship has to start at the same time as the program. You cannot start the fellowship when you've been studying for a few months. Okay. Final question. I think it's time. It's 12. So the final question is regarding evaluation panels. In my case, I want to apply to studies linked to social purposes, but my studies are in service design. What category should I choose? You should choose the panel based on the studies you want to carry out, not based on what you are, what you do, the master's or the PhD that you want to participate in. And this is a decision that you must make. Every year we receive many emails asking what do we suggest, but we cannot intervene in that decision. This is a decision that you should make directly. Okay? I think there are no more questions. I think we've come to the time allotted for this session. I would like to thank you for joining, for being there. Best of luck in the application process. If you have any doubts, you can contact us. We are available to you, Natalia and myself, to answer any specific questions. You should read through the guidelines, the selection process guidelines, the rules for participation. There you will find a lot of information to make your application more robust. And that will be all. Thank you very much. Thank you and best of luck.